Alright, so this is more or less just going to be an update video on what I've been doing. A lot of you want to know what's going on with the Ms440 hybrid. So this is the engine off the military bike, and this is the one over here. So I took it out today, and what am I saying today? I took it out yesterday and disassembled the whole engine, got it down to the bottom end, and basically filled the stud holes. I had to get some threaded rod made. Well, this is what I did. So this is 9.5 mil, right? Got it at Gal's Home Hardware, and basically just put an M10 tap on it, threaded it, and then put it inside the case. Yes, the holes are going to be a bit bigger, but you're restrafing it by putting JB weld and stuff back in it. So got this all flush. Then I just filled my transfers, the usual saw build stuff. Got that all done. So I'm waiting for that to cure up. In the meantime, what I'm probably going to work on is a better exhaust system. So this is the one I welded for the TS400 for the very short time that I ran it. I shouldn't say very short time. I ran it for a few weeks, but anyhow, it worked okay. It flowed pretty good, and it had decent low-end performance. If I have, if I can find one in my area, I like to get a dirt bike pipe. I'm leaning towards a jog pipe, just simply for the fact that I can get it for $100 on Amazon, delivered to my door, and in the reality, a lot of MX pipes are worth more than that. So I'll probably do a jog pipe. Carburetors, probably gonna do a PWK 21 millimeter. Makes the most sense for my situation. And let's get into the crankshaft. So the crank that I pulled out of the stock China bottom end, this is one I previously balanced. It works okay. But the problem with these long rod cranks, and shout out to Bill Break Fix for this one, he basically said that when you run a 40 millimeter stroke crank and it gets all the way to TDC, they have issues where the bottom lower bearing will tend to jam up from all the pressure, and it's just not good for saw engines. So what we like to do on saw engines is run a 38 millimeter stroke. It's a little bit shorter, but it's a lot closer to the original stroke, and you won't have these bottom end failures with this bearing. Speaking of bearings, I recommend upgrading them. The stock China bearings, obviously these are full of metal because I've been doing some grinding, because I intend on upgrading them. But even before this, they are a lot more gritty than a standard bearing should be. So I'm going to upgrade either to some PGNs. They're still made in China, but they're good bearings. I've seen ones made in Poland. I think those were FSI or something like that. So I could do those. There's a local bearing shop down the road that supplies really good, Japanese bearings. Might go with those. I have many options. Honestly, anything's better than Chinese bearings. I'll just put it that way. But we'll get some new bearings in here for the saw engine, and we'll go about it from there. But as far as chain goes, I'll probably upgrade this eventually. This is a 410. A 415H would be much more suitable for this build. And yeah, we'll definitely get on that. In the box here, I don't have very much pricing here. It's just a cylinder, the original. It's still in really good, wonderful shape. We have a Bikeberry head that's still just perfectly fine. So what I'll probably do is just keep this as a backup. I have a 3-springer clutch if I choose to use it. The air filter that was on the NT, actually, believe it or not, you can actually make these fit. But this is just off an OKO carb, like a one off a dirt bike, and it actually fits okay. So you could use that, I guess, but if I do get my new carb, I could throw that on. I also like the pod ones, like the little red ones, because those do look pretty sweet. The piston, it looks okay. No significant damage on it. I did do the skirt mod, and that did help with some airflow. It adds a little bit intake duration, but I mean, overall, I think it'll be a pretty clean and solid build. Oh, here's one thing too. So, something I thought was pretty cool, and I keep mentioning Bill Break Fix because he's like the king of saw builds in my opinion. At least, I wouldn't say the king of saw builds, but he's got a lot of cool stuff. So if you guys want to learn a bunch of information, I recommend checking his channel out. But he came up with a really solid way of making sure that this doesn't move around if you want to adjust timing. So what you do, these are originally 4 millimeter holes, right? I drilled them out to M5, I guess you would say, like, 5 millimeters width. And that allows you to move it 6 degrees in each direction, which makes things easier for adjusting timing. Opposed to where a keyway on the crankshaft, like here, okay, you can use that like keyway mod. It works for most people, but you can have issues with that kind of slipping if you don't use Loctite. Whereas this way of doing it, as long as you use your like card trick and you make sure that it's evenly spaced, you can clock the Magneto and it'll achieve the same effect. So the elephant in the room, will it keep up with this thing? It's hard to say, to be honest with you. What I'd like to do is get my buddy over that rides his motorized bikes too, and get him on probably the saw so he doesn't die. And I'll get on this and we'll do a drag race, but I'm gonna make sure they're, you know, it's broken in before I do any of that crap. But this thing probably, I'm gonna say easily makes about 7 or 8 horsepower, and it's a freaking death machine. You know, it's got the skinny tires. I wouldn't recommend this setup for this motor. If I was to do it again, I'd put it back on the felt faker, but we're not going to talk about that. Anyhow, this motor right here would probably, I would say, demolish the saw, but I can't say for certain because it's not together yet. But I've seen videos of the Ms440. It's no joke. It makes around 5 horsepower stock, and with putting a good pipe and carb on, it's probably more than that. So I think the Ms440 for the displacement is probably the most efficient of all the saws, because you'll see the 395 XP. That makes around 9 horsepower, and it's a 56 mil piston. Whereas this one's only 50, and it's getting up there. It's not quite 9 horsepower, but it's pretty dang close. So it just goes to show you that some of the smaller saw hybrids are nothing to sleep about. But I think it'll be interesting. You know, a mini rally versus a saw, a direct drag race in between the two to settle you guys' bets once and for all. Well, I think that's going to do it for this video. If you guys like what you saw, make sure to leave me a line down below. But yeah, next time you see this thing running, definitely be doing some burnouts and stuff for sure, but I'll definitely get a little too excited. I gotta break it in first. But yeah, so like I said, a little overview. We got our crank here, got our case halves. I mean, it's going pretty good. I don't want to jinx myself, but I also got the M6 bolts in here for the cylinder. But like I said, I think it'll be a pretty cool and definitely unique. You don't really see much in the Ms440. It's always the bigger versions of the saw, such as the MS660 and stuff, with the bigger pistons, 54 millimeter. But I think even a 3 mil difference in the piston, I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but believe me, that makes all the difference going up a hill. And I think if these things were to drag race, I can just envision what happens, because this carb tune is a little bit fat. So if you dump the throttle, it does take a little bit to catch up. So I feel what would happen if the Ms440 and this were to race. I feel like the Ms440 would take off like a bat out of hell, and this thing would have a while to catch up, and they'd be pretty even throughout the rest of the pole. That's my assumption, though. We'll see if I was correct, but you guys have to figure that out in a little bit. But that's pretty much going to do it for today's video, so thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video.